Did you know the average Canadian senior leaves over $40,000 in lifetime retirement benefits on the table? Not because they don't qualify, not because they didn't work hard enough, simply because nobody ever told them to pick up the phone. What most seniors don't realize is that 3 very specific phone calls could potentially add up to $136,000 in total lifetime retirement income. And the shocking part? Most retirees never make even one of them. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what those 3 calls are, who to call, what to say, and why waiting even one more month could be costing you money you didn't even know you were entitled to. If you're a Canadian senior or you have a parent or grandparent who is, you need to hear this, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand something that very few retirees ever figure out. Let me tell you about Margaret. Margaret is 71 years old. She lives in a small bungalow in Kitchener, Ontario. She worked for 32 years as an administrative assistant, raised 2 kids on her own after her husband passed away in her 50s, and she always believed she did everything right. She filed her taxes every year. She applied for CPP at 65. She started collecting OAS the month she turned 65. She never questioned the amounts. Why would she? The government sends the checks. It must be right. But here's where things get interesting. Last year, Margaret's neighbor mentioned something in passing about checking her CPP contribution record. Margaret had no idea what that even meant. She thought her CPP amount was locked in the day she retired. She was wrong, and that one conversation led to a discovery that changed everything about her financial picture. But I'm not going to tell you what she found just yet. Because first, you need to understand why stories like Margaret's are far more common than you think. Why do most Canadian seniors never hear about these phone calls? The answer is frustratingly simple. Government departments like Service Canada process millions of applications every single year. They do an incredible job, but they are not in the business of hunting down every possible dollar you might be entitled to. They process what you apply for. They calculate based on the information they have. They do not automatically review your entire work history to see if contributions were missed. They do not call you to say, hey, you might qualify for something extra. They do not proactively reassess your situation when your income drops in retirement. Very few retirees know this. Most seniors assume that once their benefits start, the amount is fixed and correct. They assume that if there were errors in their contribution record, someone would have caught them. They assume that if they qualified for additional supplements, they would have been enrolled automatically. But that's not how the system works. And that gap between what seniors assume and what actually happens is exactly where tens of thousands of dollars get left behind every single year. So now that you understand the problem, let's talk about the first phone call. And this one might surprise you. Phone call number 1. You need to call Service Canada at 1-800-277-9914 and request a full review of your CPP contribution record. Here's what most seniors don't realize. Your CPP retirement pension is calculated based on your contributions throughout your working life, but errors happen. Employers sometimes fail to remit contributions. Self-employment income might not have been properly reported. There may be years where you were eligible for the child rearing provision or the disability dropout but never applied for them to be factored into your calculation. When you call, ask specifically for a statement of contributions and a recalculation review. Ask them to check for any missing contribution years. Ask whether the child rearing provision was applied if you raised children. Ask whether any periods of low or zero earnings could be dropped out under the general dropout provision. Common mistakes discovered during these reviews include missing employer contributions from the 1980s and 90s, unclaimed child rearing dropouts that can remove up to 7 years of low earnings from your calculation, and periods where self-employment income was underreported. Margaret, the retiree from Kitchener, discovered that 2 years of her contributions in the early 1990s were never properly recorded by a former employer. Those 2 years, combined with the child rearing provision she never knew she could claim, resulted in a monthly CPP increase of $147. That might not sound like a fortune, but over 15 years of retirement, that's over $26,000 in additional lifetime income, and she would never have known if she hadn't made that one phone call. But here's the thing, that's just the beginning. Phone call number 2. This one is about your old age security and the guaranteed income supplement. You call the same Service Canada number, 1-800-277-9914, but this time you're asking a completely different set of questions. What most seniors don't realize is that your GIS amount is based on your previous year's income tax return. If your income has dropped since you filed that return, you could be receiving far less GIS than you should be right now. This is especially important if you stopped working partway through a year, if your pension income decreased, or if you had one-time income in a previous year that is no longer ongoing. When you call, ask for a current year income reassessment for GIS purposes. Ask whether you qualify for retroactive payments if your income was lower in prior years than what was used to calculate your benefits. Ask about the allowance for the survivor if you are between 60 and 64 and your spouse has passed away. Ask about pension income splitting and how it affects your GIS calculation. Let me give you a real lifestyle example. Robert is 74 years old. He lives in Winnipeg. He worked part-time until he was 70, and his last tax return still showed that employment income. Because Service Canada bases his GIS on that previous year's higher income, his monthly GIS was calculated at $320 less than it should have been. He called, requested a current year income reassessment, submitted a statement of his current pension and investment income, and his GIS was adjusted upward. The retroactive payment alone was over $3,800. Going forward, his monthly increase was $280. Over 12 years of retirement, that's over $40,000 in additional income. Very few retirees know that you can request a reassessment mid-year when your income drops. They wait until the next tax season, losing months of higher benefits in the process. And that brings us to what might be the most overlooked call of all. Phone call number 3. This is the one most seniors never even think to make. You're going to call Service Canada again, 1-800-277-9914, and this time you're asking for a full benefit review and correction request. Here's why this call matters. Over the course of your retirement, your circumstances change. You might become widowed. Your income might shift dramatically. You might have moved provinces, which can affect certain provincial supplements tied to your federal benefits. You might have had a previous benefit denial that should now be reconsidered based on new circumstances. When you call, ask whether any previous benefit applications or denials should be reviewed again. Ask about survivor benefits if your spouse was a CPP contributor, because many widows and widowers never realize they can receive a combined survivor and retirement pension. Ask about the allowance program if you are 60 to 64 and your partner receives GIS. Ask whether any errors were ever corrected on your account from previous years. Here's a case study that illustrates why this call is so critical. Dorothy is 68. She lives in Halifax. Her husband passed away 3 years ago. He had contributed to CPP for over 35 years. Dorothy assumed that because she was already receiving her own CPP, she couldn't get anything additional from his contributions. She was wrong. The CPP survivor's pension can be paid on top of your own retirement pension, though the combined amount is subject to a maximum. When Dorothy called and asked for a survivor benefit review, she discovered she was entitled to an additional $412 per month. That's because her own CPP was below the maximum combined benefit threshold. Over 10 years, that's nearly $50,000 in additional income she almost never claimed. Most seniors never make this call because they don't know these programs overlap. They don't know that a benefit denied 5 years ago might be approved today under different rules or circumstances. They don't know that Service Canada can review and correct past errors if you ask them to, and that silence costs them dearly. Now let's talk about the hidden cost of waiting. Every month you delay making these calls is a month you might be receiving less than you're entitled to. Let's say you discover you're underpaid by $200 a month on your CPP. If you wait 6 months to call, that's $1,200 you'll likely never recover because CPP adjustments typically go back only 11 months retroactively for some changes, and even less for others. If you're missing GIS because your income dropped and you wait a full year to request a reassessment, you could lose thousands in back payments depending on when the error began. Here's a practical example. If you're 67 years old and you have a combined CPP and OAS shortfall of $300 a month, and you live to age 85, that's 18 years of missing income. $300 times 12 months times 18 years equals $64,800. Add in a GIS adjustment of $200 a month over that same period, and you're looking at another $43,200. Combined with a survivor benefit or allowance adjustment, you can see how the lifetime value quickly approaches or even exceeds that $136,000 figure. The math isn't complicated, but the mistake of waiting is permanent. You can't go back and reclaim years of missed benefits in most cases. The system gives you a limited window, and once that window closes, the money is gone forever. So here's your action checklist. Who should call? Any Canadian senior age 60 or older who is currently receiving or about to receive CPP, OAS, or GIS. Any widow or widower who has not had their survivor benefits reviewed. Any senior whose income has dropped in the past 2 years. Any senior who raised children and is unsure whether the child rearing provision was applied to their CPP. What documents should you prepare? Your social insurance number. Your most recent notice of assessment from the Canada Revenue Agency. Your current pension and income statements. Any previous correspondence from Service Canada about your benefits. The names and dates of any periods where you were out of the workforce raising children or dealing with disability. What questions should you ask? Can you review my CPP contribution record for any missing years? Was the child rearing provision applied to my calculation? Can you reassess my GIS based on my current income rather than last year's tax return? Am I eligible for any survivor benefits from my deceased spouse's CPP contributions? Has my account ever been reviewed for errors or corrections? Which seniors benefit most? Those with interrupted work histories, those who were self-employed at any point, those who raised children, those whose income has recently decreased, widows and widowers, and seniors who have never once questioned whether their benefit amount was correct. Now for the final reveal. How do small monthly increases add up to $136,000 in total lifetime value? Let's break it down conservatively. A CPP contribution record correction adding $150 a month maintained for 20 years equals $36,000. A GIS reassessment adding $250 a month maintained for 15 years equals $45,000. A survivor benefit or allowance adding $350 a month maintained for 10 years equals $42,000. Add in retroactive payments for the months or years you were underpaid, provincial supplements that may be triggered by federal adjustments, and the compounded value of receiving that income earlier rather than later, and you can see how the total lifetime value reaches well into 6 figures. These aren't fantasy numbers. These are based on real program maximums and real cases where seniors discovered they were leaving money on the table. The $136,000 figure represents a cumulative lifetime scenario where multiple optimizations are found across CPP, OAS, GIS, and related programs. Not everyone will find every opportunity, but even finding one or two could mean tens of thousands of dollars you didn't know you had coming. And the only way to find out is to make those 3 phone calls. Here's what I want you to do right now. If this video made you think about your own benefits or your parents' benefits, I want you to leave a comment below and answer this honestly. Have you ever reviewed your CPP or OAS? Have you ever called Service Canada to ask whether your amount is correct? Have you ever requested a recalculation or a reassessment? If the answer is no, you're not alone. But now you know what to do. If you found this information valuable, hit that subscribe button. We cover Canadian retirement benefits, pension strategies, and senior financial tips every single week. And please share this video with a friend, a sibling, a neighbor, or a parent who needs to hear it. Because the sad truth is that the seniors who need this information the most are often the ones who never find it. 3 phone calls, 1 to review your CPP contributions, 1 to reassess your OAS and GIS, 1 to request a full benefit review and correction. That's it. That's the difference between leaving money on the table and taking home what you worked your entire life to earn. Don't wait. The cost of waiting is measured in thousands of dollars per year, and the only person who can make those calls is you. One final note before we wrap up. Everything discussed in this video is based on publicly available government programs and general illustrative scenarios. Benefit eligibility, amounts, and rules depend entirely on your individual circumstances, your contribution history, your income, your residency, and the official rules in effect at the time of your application. Nothing in this video constitutes financial, legal, or tax advice. Always contact Service Canada directly or consult a qualified professional for guidance specific to your situation. The lifetime value figures presented are hypothetical examples to illustrate potential outcomes and are not guaranteed. Your actual results will vary. Make the calls, ask the questions, know your rights, because nobody is going to do it for you.